Hey folks, it's Jim. We're going to do a video, the second part to Red Alert. You can see I put up the old board, or did I do this like 2 years ago or something? I don't know what we did this. You know, I forecasted a lot of things that are taking place right now, didn't I? Okay, just wanted to share that. Okay, what just happened was the Fed, Powell decided not to raise interest rates, right? And in fact, saying that they're not going to raise in 2019 and maybe once in 2020. Now, what does that tell us? It tells us that we just tried to normalize the economy again, right? Or the monetary system, the paradigm that we live under, and they can't do it. It's been 10 years, folks, and they cannot normalize interest rates. Therefore, the economic paradigm that we live under is done. Now, your Congress knows it, right? Everybody knows it. The world knows it. America cannot return to normal. Okay, and this is why our retirement funds throughout the nation are in trouble. Okay, this is part of the reason they're in trouble. Because we can't normalize interest rates, and that would help retirement funds in the long run, and that's how they used to be successful, and that's why they're no longer successful. Retirement funds cannot, not only are they Ponzi schemes, most of them, but they cannot survive at low interest rates. They just can't, because then they have to invest in risky assets, and growth can be unstable and unpredictable, right? So anyway, so now we know that our economic paradigm is over, and the world knows it, as well as hopefully your Congress and Senate, and that's why they're talking about MMT. Don't panic about MMT. It's modern monetary theory. Japan's been using it for 15 years. So if you've got somebody out there panicking about all this, don't worry about it. It may be the only way for us to go forward, okay? Unfortunately, America is just in debt and in hawk up to its butt, and it's getting worse, right? I think the deficit was $1 trillion this year. So it doesn't matter, Democrat, Republican folks, none of that is helping anyone to argue over that stuff. We are just going deeper and deeper in debt, constantly at a higher and higher rate, okay? And that's because the economic paradigm is stalled, all right? And it's just not going to work again. So we're going to have to do something different, but don't panic. The inverted yield curve, you may have heard about that. While that is important, it is not a tomorrow event, okay? Inverted yield curve usually precedes a recession by 9 months to 2 years, okay? Go back and look at economic history. That's what an inverted yield curve does. It does not say that the sky is falling tomorrow. So don't panic over an inverted yield curve, okay? Don't run out saying, oh, we're going to collapse and all that. Don't worry about it, okay? These are just economic indicators, that's all. And I would like to go against that idea as well, because China's small business loans just skyrocketed, okay? So over the last quarter, their small business loans are rising, which means China's growing from within. And it may take a while for your news or your media or whoever you're watching out there to finally get that information. I seem to get things a little bit early, but for whatever reason. Some of the people I would like you to go out and watch are Greg Hunter's interview of Mark Faber on March 16th. If you're confused about MMT, Basel III, and the remonetization of gold and all of that. That's a really good interview. Another one of Greg Hunter's interview of Andrew Maguire. I don't know what date that was, but it was the same week as Mark Faber. And another interview with Jim Rickards, same week as Mark Faber. Okay, all in the March 16th to 21st range. Okay, all of those are pretty decent interviews that will talk about what I'm talking about from a rational perspective. The other thing, I listened to somebody with a lot of subscribers, and I don't do names and I don't berate people. This is just a warning to most of you, okay, out there who may be watching people like this. If someone's in the gold business or trying to advise you about money and didn't even know Basel III was taking place on March 31st, you might not want to listen to that person economically. Because if they're in the gold business and they don't know gold's remonetized as a Tier 1 asset on March 31st, and it comes to a shock to them, and they're doing a video about how they weren't aware that that was happening on March 31st, you might not want to listen to them about economics, okay? Because trust me, That's pretty important if you're in the gold business. And I'm only making a suggestion to you folks. I'm seeing a lot of people out there watching people who really don't have a clue about finance in the first place. Most of all, world finance, or getting the right information, being able to predict economic models rather than all of a sudden it being a surprise to them. The gold's the tier 1 asset on March 31st. I mean, man, if you're in the gold business, there's no excuse for that. I'm sorry. There's just not. And I would not invest a penny with those people, period. Something I wanted to talk about. Our standard of living in America is being compressed due to debt. And our middle class is shrinking. You all know that. And it has been shrinking over the last 20 years, hasn't it? China's middle class has expanded to 400 million people. You got to understand that. More than the entire population of the United States is now the middle class of China. And these new small business loans that are coming in, you know, their success rate on small business is far greater than our success rate here in America. And that's only going to expand their middle class even further, folks. You got to know and understand this. That's why I'm not worried about an inverted yield curve, okay? Especially in the U.S. We're becoming less and less important to the world's economic health, okay? While we are important for now and will be for the next 2 to 5 years possibly, we're only 350 million people and most of Americans are tapped out on debt. 9 out of 10 Americans will not retire worry-free. That's just reality, and you know that. People are choosing medication or food at night sometimes, and that's truly sad to the state that we've come in. The next thing I wanted to get into is one of the problems that we have going forward in America, and I've shared this before on my old series, is China, India, and Russia have 50 engineers for every one we have. And that's really the major problem when we talk about an economics forecast here for America, which doesn't look good. Our paradigm is stalled and it's going to need to be changed. But then we need to look at the realities of the engineer ratio, 50 to 1. Big problem. They got 50 people to solve a problem, we got 1. Can you see the problem here, folks? Major, major problem going forward, and that's the reality of America. And again, we're only 350 million people. We got to accept that. We're tapped out in debt. We got to accept that. We got to change from within and not worry about what's going on outside the world. We have to fix from within, and hopefully we'll get some good people that are all for that in our government. So I've explained to you MMT, don't panic. I've explained to you inverted yield curve, don't panic. It's a leading indicator, okay? And I think that's going to shift because we got China growing from within at a pretty healthy pace again. And Trump will make some good deals, hopefully. He needs to make deals with the Belt and Road because that's where the future is for the world, right, on the Belt and Road. The next thing I wanted to do is get into where's the gold going. If you can follow, right now, it's still, you can trace it. Venezuela's gold is wound up back under the Federal Reserve via Citibank, and now we're leaving it alone, and Russia and China are in there going to try and rebuild it, get an infrastructure so they can get the oil out of there at a reasonable price. And remember Gaddafi. What happened to Gaddafi's gold, right? Place we messed up. What happened to Iraq's gold? Where did it wind up? And that's what I've been telling you about, follow the money, okay? Where is all the missing gold? And is it possible that we, as well as other nations, will reveal that maybe we're holding more gold than we expect? Or did they use it to cover losses in the COMEX from under the Federal Reserve? In other words, did the Federal Reserve screw something up and that gold got leased or fulfilled and they didn't have enough to fulfill anymore? Remember, go back to Germany calling for its gold. It was delayed. Not only was it delayed, they got back different gold than they gave us. They were worried about that. So is it possible that a lot of this meddling we've been doing is about gold on the undercurrent of everything, and we've been filling holes that have been created to cover things up? I don't know, okay? I'm only saying this is something that I see from a rational perspective. But I hope you're all doing well. Don't panic again. I'm going to get into an economics series now about some of the principles I use in my life and about making money, okay? Just remember, folks, we're entering into a new paradigm here, but I think we have 2 to 5 years. And so don't panic. Get prepared, be prepared. You got, you know what I mean? Each day, do what you can, and don't panic. right? Don't make bad decisions. But yeah, I just wanted to cover some of this stuff for you. I think I told you about the interviews, Mark Faber, Jim Rickards, and Andrew Maguire, right? They were all interviewed by Greg Hunter recently. I think they're decent interviews. Yeah. And so my series I'm going to get into going forward is how we can be aware and how we can change our own personal lives and the way we live to help us be more prepared for what's coming, the paradigm change, right? And I think that is more important than worrying about a lot of things that other people are panicking about. In all things, in and of itself, what is it? Hope you're all doing well. And one more thing I wanted to share. If we were to go back to Austrian theory at a fractional reserve of 10 to 1, 90% of the world would be stable. I predicted that 2 years ago, didn't I? Well, that's holding truer and truer every day. 90% of the world's population would be okay. We, not so much. But over almost 6 billion people, yep, that's reality today, folks. Jim out.